And hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. Today is December the 13th, I think. Gosh, yes. I hope so, or else I'm really confused. But welcome to Documentation Not Included, episode 8.0. Have app idea, lots of question marks, profit. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us live on Twitch, for those of you who are here live at Twitch, for those of you listening on the podcast or watching on YouTube or in one of our other various locations, which we're starting to cross-pollinate because we're like bees now. We hope to see you live in Twitch soon, or maybe even on our show. We do like chatting with everybody. Remember, Thursday, 7 p.m. GMT. Now, we have our usual faces, obviously mine, but don't ignore me. Let's get on to the more important people. We have the guy with the epic beard, Chris.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Patrick then. It's getting there.
He's trying.
It's getting there.
He's trying. And of course we have Patrick.
Indeed, I am here. And I keep forgetting that we have audio listeners.
Yes.
So today I will try to make a way better job than last time, where I was half of the podcast talking with my hands like Italian. I might have taken it from my roommate, unfortunately. Apologies for that.
No worries. And then, of course, tonight we are joined by Hamid Shojaee, who is someone I have been dying to get on this show. I am not going to lie.
I appreciate that. I feel like I'm missing a headset. I got to get one of those giant headsets so that I can feel at home.
It's what all the cool kids on podcasts do these days. We feel like we're in a studio. Anyway, Hamid, so if you want to introduce yourself, tell us what you do, tell the audience about your company and about your products, if you want.
Okay, so I'm Hamid Shojaee. I've been developing software for most of my adult life, actually even as a teenager. And as an adult, I've attempted at several different software companies, and Axosoft has been one of the successful ones that has created a few different products. It started out with a project management product by the same name, Axosoft, and then we also most recently have created a product called GitKraken, which is a Git client, and then Glowboards, which is sort of another attempt at a project management tool as well. And then I also have founded another company called PureChat, which creates live chat software and bot software as well. So all of my sort of career experience is software and software company related.
Okay, excellent. So are you still hands-on then? Do you still do development on a daily basis?
Not anymore. I don't write code anymore. I loved it and I miss it. That's probably the one thing that I miss the most. Yeah. But I still consider myself somewhat technical. I can sort of have a conversation about various different levels of topics.
How do you find out about new technology and new languages, frameworks and things like that? Do you hear about them through your developers, I'm assuming?
Yeah, exactly.
Still, project management is something that's critically undervalued, I'd say, in development in general, especially game development. Mm-hmm. Most of the companies I've been working with throughout the 6 years of my career, they basically crashed and burned because of atrocious project management. So it's definitely gonna be interesting to pick your brain about that topic and topic in general of sort of, when you have people who want to do stuff and you have idea for stuff to do, how do you mesh it all together so it works instead of crashing and burning?
Yeah.
But before we get into that, because I know we're going to lead right into the topics, but go ahead. I'll give you just a couple seconds because I have an icebreaker question of doom today.
No, I was just going to say I agree, but sometimes also I feel like people make project management more complicated than it needs to be. Fundamentally, it's just making a list of stuff that you need to get done. And if it's just you, that list could be on a piece of paper or on your phone or in an app or whatever. And if it's with multiple people, you just want to make sure that list is shareable, right? Like fundamentally, that's all project management is. But
I love you.
See, I I have to say there's one thing I think that's kind of missing. When you start getting into other people or having things, you have to make certain you're tracking the budget right and your resources, and you've got to make certain your scope is handled, because if you're working alone, scope can go all over the place with creeping. And if you're working with the team, the same thing can happen, or you might have to deal with a resource where you've budgeted a certain amount of time, but someone's off sick. I mean, I think it's a little bit more than just a list, but in essence, I will say yes, it is a list.
In essence, bureaucracy often gets in the way of
that I will agree with.
The doing, let's say.
Yeah. So you want to have if you think of project management as just a list of stuff that you need to get done, and then, that list can be shared amongst people, then everything else that you just described, Josie, you can think of that as like overhead, process overhead. Now, process overhead can save you because you don't overcommit, or you don't undercharge your customer when the project is going to cost you $1 million and you've sold it for $500,000 or whatever. So there's a lot of those process overhead can save you from all of those type of things. But if you think of it as process overhead rather than just anything else, basically, then you try to minimize the process overhead. And it all becomes about the project. For this project, what's important? Is it mission critical? Are people going to die if it fails? All this other stuff. Are we going to have to close our doors if the project is late? Or or all of these things not a big deal? And depending on the answers to those things, then you can sort of handle it with very little process or with a lot of process, right? If you're sending stuff to Mars, you can't fix it afterwards, right? So you want a lot of process overhead, and that's okay. That's just an expense of the project, but.
And this is why Hamid has joined us today. These are things we're going to be digging into. But yes, your icebreaker question. We have a question every single episode. It changes, and it has absolutely nothing to do with development, has absolutely nothing to do generally with technology. Today could not be any further from the truth. I've actually handpicked this question for Patrick.
Oh, I feel special.
So here is your question. Would you go with aliens if they came to Earth and asked you to join them in outer space?
Oh, fuck yeah. Oh, shit. Damn it.
8 minutes. 8 minutes.
That's pretty good. I mean, I heard he only lasted 2 minutes the last time, right?
I'm trying and I fail. I would go with aliens only if to teach them the art of swearing, the casual swearing, the non-committal swearing that just slips over.
So
I feel like that's the appropriate answer. Why would you not say fuck yeah? Because you would have to have really good reason. Like the aliens seemed violent. They killed a bunch of people before they.
It's how Josie phrased it. She phrased it in the way that I would answer yes. If they asked me to come. Right. If someone asks me to do something, I might do it. Probably will do it.
But they could still ask in a way that you wouldn't say no because of the implications.
You might want to ask some pre-qualifying questions, like, are we going to get back in a reasonable amount of time, or is it going to be 1,000,000 years from now? And,
have you got a business process diagram put together? Have you...
Have we done a risk analysis, anyone?
We've got an SDS put
in a heartbeat. I would be there, I'd just be like, yes and yes. I did phrase it that way, kind of on purpose.
I think I'd go if they were violent, to be fair. I think I'd be happy just leaving the planet some days.
I mean, violent would be fun. If they would develop a taste for human flesh, I would be feeling slightly unsafe. But other than that, why not? Just... Not let's ignore the traversing of the stars, but just experiencing the totally alien culture and the mode of thinking, the experience that you would have, even if that would be forever, even if they would say, look, there is no return ticket. I'm like, why not? I will try my best to send back journals for the good of humanity, but if I can't, no big deal.
Remember, folks, if you have an answer to this fantastic question, we want to hear from you. #DNI stream. I will state this. The answer to this, and the way I phrase this, was done on purpose because it actually deals with today's show. So something cool and exciting has just popped into your brain. And the very first thing I heard from pretty much all of us is, fuck yeah, I would be up there. And then all of a sudden we get, they've asked me, but if they like human flesh, but if they do this other thing, but if there is this other thing, it's almost
how much human flesh? Can I spare some?
Yeah, I could sacrifice an arm probably. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I don't know if I could. I'm quite partial to my arm, but I don't know. Maybe it's aliens.
But what if they would give you like a kick-ass alien prosthetic?
Now, see, at that point in time, I'm just like, the aliens are probably outside of their scope, and maybe we need to have a discussion before we leave the planet. But there we go. So I did that on purpose. Sometimes I have a devious brain, sometimes I don't.
I like it.
Yeah, so with that in mind, let's jump into our current topic, which is essentially the entire project management, businessy deals that most of the developers don't think about, but they really should, right? So we have plenty of topics to pick from at the start, and I'm gonna be frank, I can't even pick because there's everything's interesting. So let's just go from the top, right? So what if let's say I have an idea and I think it's a pretty good one, because usually people think that their ideas are the tits, but how can I actually judge the how much it's worth? Like, how can I judge the worth of the idea that I have?
You probably can't. I feel like it's really difficult to judge. I mean, like, if you take some of the world's most successful companies, whether we're talking about Google or Facebook or Microsoft or Twitter, none of these guys knew what their sort of like markets were worth. I mean, none of them. And then, of course, you take the small, super small ones. Sometimes their markets expand rapidly. The only sort of markets that you know what it's worth is established markets, in which it's very difficult to penetrate unless you have a disruptive technology. So something like the car industry would be a good example of that, where the market size is very well known. It's like $1.5 trillion a year. And then there's already established players, which is why, like, for 100 years, no company has been able to like penetrate it, except for Tesla now in the past 10 or 15. So,
but it's disruptive in that case.
And they still have so many pains, though. Yeah, like a Tesla still has so many pains. Like, they keep having trouble with delivering. So even if you have a good disruptive technology in established market, there still can be a problem.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah. So disruptive technology is disruptive because no one has done it before too. So like, that's the other problem, is that disruptive technology tends to be difficult. So like your idea, if it's disrupting an established market that is massive, is probably going to be very difficult to execute. It's super rare for things to be like easy.
So would you say then that when we were talking about the value of the idea, so I'm looking at this from, let's say, for example, I come up with, somebody gave me a suggestion years ago. If you want to make a product, make Facebook, but make it for a very, very small catchment. Make it for a very small area of people, like Facebook for dogs. I don't know. A daft example.
Guinea pigs.
Or for guinea pig owners. There you go. Facebook for guinea pig owners. Facebook for wool, people who knit. My wife is on one. She uses it all the time, and that's all she uses it more than Facebook. That kind of thing. But that was one way to penetrate an existing market. That's not considered disruptive, though, is it?
Well, you know what? I mean, like, I don't necessarily think every product has to be disruptive at a global scale. It is disruptive for your sort of customer base, right? Because, and I think that the suggestion to make, something like Facebook, but for a particular market segment, is an excellent suggestion in general. You see it like Airbnb for boats, or for like other things besides hotels, or Uber for for walking your dog, or where it's like dog walkers. You sort of like, they come to you and you order it whenever you need it. So like, that same concept definitely applies because it makes it much easier to focus on a much more narrow market, and then you create something that is disruptive and attractive to that market. So Facebook for Dogs would be much more attractive to dogs if it had features that were very dog specific, right? So I think if you were sort of generalizing, I think that's a very good generalized.
I could just imagine the Facebook update. Oh, look, a ball! Oh my god! This ball is brilliant! This ball is brilliant!
That would be amazing.
Human left me for days alone.
We've all seen them.
Human left for 30 minutes. Is he dead?
Stay tuned. Oh, the clickbait dog titles.
Oh God.
Okay, so that's one type of sort of marketing idea things. Most of the developers I know, myself included, and these lovely gentlemen here, will start by going, I need a tool that does something. Yeah. And I can't find it. Or every tool that I find specifically has something I don't want, or is 5 steps way beyond what I need, or has everything but the one thing I want, but I don't have the ability to update or modify. So maybe I'll do my own thing. That seems to be a common, pardon me, a common idea generator.
For sure. And in fact, that's how I got my starts as well. And I needed a tool that helped me sort of keep track of who's working on what, the project management stuff. And I was like, all I need is a shared list, essentially. Like, I want my spreadsheet to be, shareable with other people. And of course, at the time, Google Docs didn't exist, so maybe I wouldn't have created Axosoft had it existed, or whatever. But that was sort of like the problem that I personally had that I wanted to solve. And it's a great way to start on a product because you already have insight into the customer. You know exactly the type of problems that your customers have because you are your customer. And hopefully there's a lot of people out there just like you who are experiencing this problem. So that is a great way to also start a product or project and see where it goes.
So, Hamid, how would you approach an idea for which that you are not a primary customer? Let's say you talk to a friend and a bunch of friends tell you that, they would like this one thing that doesn't exist, and you actually have skill to make it. How do you go about it? Like, do you do some broader market research?
I mean, that's the classical route, isn't it? Doing research and development beforehand.
I'd also throw out that if a friend has said something to you, 9 times out of 10, you then grill your friend. Oh, really? What is it you don't like? What is it you're looking for? What is it you really wish you had? What is your dream list? What are the low-hanging fruits? What would you be satisfied with? What wouldn't you be satisfied with? What would make an MVP? What wouldn't make an MVP? And then drill even deeper. But because you have access to at least one target audience.
That's exactly right. You want to be able to get them in and hopefully help you develop the sort of develop the product, and they become the sort of product expert, right? In that sense, or at least give you insights into what the problem should or product should look like and the problems that it's trying to solve. But definitely having insight into how to solve the problems is key to success in any product category. And if you happen to be the expert in it because you're creating a product for yourself, then that makes it a lot easier because you don't need an external person. But if you're not creating a product for yourself and you're creating it for other people and you're not going to be the user, then you definitely need the user, some example of the user, to be close to you and answer all these questions that Josie just mentioned.
Well, see, I'm now going to sort of shift it because ideas, I think when it comes to developers, most of us end up in dev one way or another because we're curious and we're always going to explore and break things because we're just horrible that way. But let's move to the thing that 99% of developers I know fear. It is, we now have the idea. We've built, we'll say, a prototype. So we kind of have a proof of concept. But now how do I make money? How do I do this thing called marketation?
Wait, do you mean it just doesn't fall from the sky? Like, that's not how it works?
See, I bring this up because I happen to know quite a few developers who had, we'll say, their $1 million idea. And I've seen a couple of different paths taken. I've seen people join accelerators to be partnered up and find investors. I've seen people just go after the investor route with angel investors and other things like that. And these are all topics we will explain if need be. So don't worry, because these are going to be words that some developers I know are like, and I know some who have refused to touch investors at all in any way, shape, or form because they see them as the conspiracy reptilian creatures or something like that. I'm looking at you, Patrick. Don't worry. I got to get the conspiracy in at least once in an episode. But yes, so there are so many different paths to take. And I'm curious if you had experience with each of the different types, or if there are even some I haven't even mentioned.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, when you have an idea, you create a product, and the next stage is not making money, believe it or not. I mean, like, that might be what you want, but that never happens. It doesn't even happen for very well-funded companies. So that create amazing products that really take off. Usually the next step is actually getting user adoption. And I think a lot of user adoption can come in a couple of ways. You can try to sell your product even in the early stages and try to get people to pay for it and get some users to use it and get going. I'm a terrible person when it comes to sales. I don't know how to do sales very effectively. So, and I don't like people in general. So,
welcome to documentation not included.
And the last thing I want to do is like talk about my product and like sell it to you. So, so I've always avoided that like the plague. So what I have done is try to get user adoption by generally giving the product away for free in the early stages of product development, so that I can get users without having to go sell them on it. And that tends to work fairly easily if you have something that has some value in it for users. Then once you build a user base and you start getting feedback, you're like, okay, now you're getting some information that's useful, where you can take that back to the product and improve the product, and then you can either charge for future versions of the product, or you can charge from a particular date onward. So whatever you sort of decide to do, I mean, there's obviously different paths. It's going to take time. It's never easy. It always takes longer than you expect or want. And depending on product category, team size, et cetera, it could cost nothing in terms of, it might be just your time in its development, or it could cost millions of dollars. And I've done all of those things. And you might have to go raise money if you want to spend millions of dollars to create it, which I have also done in the form of angel. Or you might do it organically, just start by yourself, and as you get sales, you invest back into the company, which is what I did for Axosoft. So, I'm happy to explore any of those things, but there's a lot of stuff that I just put out there.
Yeah, there is an awful lot there. I mean, I can speak from the experiences that I have had, because I admit I have a thing I want to see succeed really, really badly. And user adoption has been exceptional, like really, 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 really good. I'm second guessing pricing at this current moment in time. And one of the biggest fears I have is if I play too much in the pricing world, the user adoption that I have currently is going to falter really badly.
That's a good concern to have.
And it's one of those things where I remember, because I've watched talks you've given it that's I wanted you to have on here, because some of the things you said are awesome. But you made a comment about something that you had done with Pure Chat, which I thought was really fascinating, because you started out with one pricing model, went to something else entirely, and then like you did this bouncy thing,
right?
Your pricing until you actually ended up settling. How would you judge the right time to take that risk?
Also, how does it impact the adoption rate? Because at least my gut feeling is that whenever you increase the prices, people hate it. People much rather have a bigger price upfront and then maybe drop it down than to have a smaller price and then have to pay more.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work well in that scenario for the company. So I'll tell you in just a little bit. But going back to answer your question, Josie, about like when do you start doing that? It largely depends on your tolerance level and where you are in your own sort of like needs as a developer or as an entrepreneur or whoever. If you have a need for this thing to pay for your expenses, then you kind of need to do it sooner than later, right? Like that might be a fact of life. With PureChat, since you brought that up, one of the things that we did, we had a fairly substantial team working on PureChat at Axosoft, and we decided like we have a product here that's very, very successful. It's getting like super rapid user adoption. We had offered it for free. But we had like 6 people working on it on a full-time basis. So the expenses were fairly substantial. And then we decided we're going to separate it out into its own company, and we're going to do a raise. We're going to raise some money to sort of see if we can have it be self-funded, essentially, and continue to grow it. And then what we did is we started, when we separated it out into its own company, we started charging for the product. And what that did is that this product that was sort of the user adoption was growing like this, started to sort of flatline in terms of user growth. And the way in which we went about charging was probably not ideal. But our revenues started growing rapidly, and we had revenue. And we got to a point where we're a self-sustained company and break even or profitable to some extent. So it's all sort of like, like doing one kind of caused the other, but like we now have revenue and it pays for itself. And now we have like more time to experiment with other things. Looking back, we could have probably been a little bit more mild in terms of the way we monetized it, and we probably should have offered a more powerful version that was still free to continue the adoption growth. And that's why when we take a look at GitKraken, for example, we've taken a slightly different approach where GitKraken, for the large part, is an honor-based system, meaning like you pay for it if you're using it commercially. That's our license. Now, do we have people who are using it commercially who are not paying for it? Yeah, probably, right? Like there's probably countries that we don't get money from, like China and India, like that, like just. That's what they do, and that's okay because we're getting the user adoption. Not that it's okay to pirate, but you get the sense of like you're getting some percentage of people to pay for it, and that still has allowed the user growth to continue on that curve.
So that's sort of like the Adobe business model where they don't mind people pirating them because everyone gets addicted to Adobe products. And when they actually join the workforce, they force the companies to adopt Adobe Suite.
It goes back to the school system. If you can get into the school system with your product, and here's a little bit of advice for you. If you can get into the school system with a product that fits a particular niche, and that's what they learn to do, whatever it is they're doing on, I can guarantee you when they leave, they'll take it with them. And that's how Adobe totally dominated the art world. It's not that there weren't other products. It's just they had a darn good marketing team, and they offered, hey, you're going to be taking this class on how to do Photoshop or some kind of artistic work, and you will get a license that will only last as long as your semester.
Right. Well, I mean, that's exactly right. And, the way to look at it when you're a software company is if someone's not going to pay for your product, these are potentially your choices. Like if someone's not going to pay for your product, which a student will not, right? Or the choice is that they're going to use somebody else's product. Would you rather them use your product and not pay for it, or someone else's product, which you still don't get any money for, right? So at least if they use your product and they don't pay for it, there's a chance that someday they might. There's a chance that they're going to refer a friend that might. There's a chance that the word of mouth grows, or they provide other sorts of feedback that might be valuable. All of that, there's a chance for. If they use somebody else's product, that's like the worst of all scenarios, right? Not only do you not get any money from them, but now this product has one more user, and there's a chance that user is going to refer other people to this product, and someday down the road they might pay for this product. So all of those potential benefits for you actually go away and become somebody else's benefits. So
this sounds to me just like networking. When you go to a networking meeting or you speak to other business people, you may give something away for free, or you may give the time or your consultation or your expertise or something like that, because not necessarily because of this, because that's your nature most of the time, but you may end up getting referrals sometime down the line that it might change your life. You've no idea what's going to happen. But if you generally are providing, going to a networking meeting every week, and you're offering value to that group of people, they will reciprocate in some way at some point in the future by paying for your services, by getting someone else to pay for your services. It's a very similar thing I'm seeing here, but it's not the way I've ever thought about software. Because when I think about software, I think about all of the costs involved in it, the time that it takes to develop it. There are people who don't have the luxury of having a development team in place. They've put something together in their own free time, in their own spare time, and then now got a product. They've got nobody to support this product. What happens then? What happens when they have to spend all of their time supporting the free users and not having...
That's a great question. So when was the last time you were using something for free that was not advertiser supported, like like Google or whatever, but that you expected this amazing support from? Chances are you don't have such expectations. So, Josie, you mentioned that you have a product out there that is getting really good user adoption. You're not charging for it.
Oh no, there is a payment model in place. Just not certain it's the right payment model, which was what I was contemplating. But yes.
But if people are using it for free, chances are they're not expecting this amazing support. Now,
and yet they get it.
Say again.
And yet they get it.
Yeah,
I tend to be a support freak, so
that's the perfect. That's the perfect thing. That's the right thing to do as a developer. But support basically costs you as the developer of the product as much as you want to put into it. Now, if you're building it from the sense of like, someday I'm going to make this into a business and I want like my customers to be extremely happy, and that's standpoint, then you put in time for support and you delight your customers by giving them quick responses and giving them satisfactory answers, right? And that does have a cost associated with it. If it's just you, it's just your time. So you can decide how much of your time you put into support, and you get through whatever you get through, and then the rest you ignore. That might be one approach, right? But going back to something Patrick mentioned, which is that customers tend to like having a higher price first, and then if anything coming down on price. That might be true from a end user point of view. Like if something was going to cost money, you'd rather it cost $100 and then maybe go down. That's only true from an end user if you haven't already purchased it. But here's what happens from the company's perspective. So let's say you charge $100 for something, and then you get 1,000 customers. And let's just say for sake of argument, since we live in a SaaS world, it's $100 per month. And you get 1,000 customers, and you now have $100,000 per month in revenue. Again, just random example. And then you're like, I probably overpriced this thing, and I should price it at $50 per month, not $100. Well, now all of a sudden you can't do that. Why can't you do that? Because, it would cut your revenues from $100,000 to $50,000, and now you will lose $50,000 of your revenues guaranteed if you lower the price for everyone to $50. Whereas the other way, going up, is much easier to do, and you don't necessarily have to increase your prices for existing customers. So if you had done $50 to begin with, and you have 1,000 customers, and chances are you would have actually had more than 1,000 since it was a lower price. But now you have $50,000 in revenue. Increasing your price to 100 because you underpriced it for whatever reason has no repercussions in terms of like your immediate revenues, because you could have kept the price the same for all of your existing customers, so they still pay you $50,000 the next month, and new people just pay you the $100 rate. So it's much easier to take your price up, much more difficult to take your price down.
That's perfect. You've seen this just happen recently, Patrick, in the gaming world. You know, we've had a couple of games that came out, and like within the next month, they were slashed in price. You know, Tomb Raider, Fallout, what have you, and the entire public lost their bacon.
That's a really good point that I haven't considered, because when you raise the price, you can grandfather the old customers, so you don't generate any bad will, and also you paradoxically generate a lot of goodwill, because you sort of encourage early adoption. And then you can sort of get people like, maybe I should buy it now, because what if they're gonna raise prices again? That's a point I haven't considered.
Yeah.
Early access.
Just to be clear, there's always going to be people who are going to be upset whenever you charge or raise prices on anything. I mean, and that's
or even
legitimate.
Make a change.
Or add a new feature, make something available to one tier but not another tier. Yeah.
Right. And that's legitimate end user sort of concerns. That happens with everything. So, it's just there's tons of people out there. You don't have to satisfy all of them.
Yeah.
Just hopefully the ones that are your actual target audience. It's one of those things.
Right.
So we have questions that we have had come in from a variety of people. And remember, guys, if you do have other questions, feel free to jump in. But I'm just going to try and make certain I get questions that were sent in. So someone, I'm assuming this is a question from one of you guys. Why is my idea better than my competitors, and does it really matter? So I guess it comes down to the fact that we live in a world where 9 times out of 10, most of the ideas you have aren't going to be revolutionary, game-breaking, Facebook or Twitter concept, which actually originally started back with MySpace and even back a little further with, I think it was Ulalu or something like that. There were other things, and they all kind of evolved, and thus you had your breakout product on Facebook. So you're going to have a competitor.
Right.
It'll be slightly different. Does it matter if your idea is better, or does it just matter if it's slightly different? Or
how do you succeed over your competitors?
The problem is that it's really difficult to judge whether or not your idea is better, and it's even more difficult for you to judge it who are biased, who have a very biased viewpoint, right? Like about your own idea. So I think ultimately the market decides whether your product is better. And the market doesn't just decide based on product. It decides based on a number of different factors, which include, do they even know about it? Right? Like that's the whole marketing side of things.
So how do we minimize that exposure then? I'm thinking about this I'm a consultant. I work on my own. Most of the time I do work as part of a team occasionally, but it's usually for an established company that's got a product that needs to be developed, so I input into that. At this point where we have a product in place, or at the point before we've actually developed the product, we've done our research as much as we can, we've got an idea and we think it's going to be great. How do we minimize this, the exposure, the amount of time that this is going to take, considering there isn't much time available with there just being one person or 2 people available on a particular project?
Yeah. So you're talking about minimize the part about building the product or marketing?
So we've talked about proof of concepts and MVPs.
Right.
Is that a good idea to get that out to the public as early as possible? I mean, I know the answer to this specifically because I've done a few different ways of approaching MVPs and RATs. There's another term for riskiest assumption test, which is similar to an MVP, but you essentially take the riskiest assumption that you have about a particular product, and then you
build that first.
Yeah, and then you test that. It doesn't even have to be the end product. You just test to see if that, you put something out that sees if somebody opens up a leaflet, for example. Are they actually reading this leaflet? Are they spending longer than 30 seconds reading it? That kind of thing. Kind of went off track a little bit. But yeah, essentially I'm saying is, when do we get the users in? Are early adopters more important for long term, or are they? How do we? I don't know. This is the answer. I don't know. What do we do with these people?
I've got an answer for this as well. So, because I have experience on that one.
So I have a slightly different take. I mean, I think that MVP conceptually is a good idea and understanding to have, and definitely doing highest risk things first, and making sure that you can even accomplish the things that you're assuming you can accomplish by tackling the highest risk items first is definitely the right way to build products. But when it comes to MVPs, people think of MVPs as like, I'm just going to build like a minimum viable product in that like it's something that's usable. And that's not what an MVP should really be. An MVP needs to be the minimum viable product that your customer would accept over all of the existing solutions that they already have. So you have to have this additional qualifier for an MVP. And if you don't, I think it's very easy to create something that is crap and nobody will adopt it. And then you'll say, it's a good thing I didn't invest in that product because even the MVP failed to get any adoption. So I saved so much money. And you're just sort of self-validating. But
so I was to say, as a developer, then you focus on getting. When we talk about MVPs, we focus on getting something out, get it done as quickly as possible. I'm not going to put all of my layers in there. I'm not going to do my architecture like I normally would. I maybe won't even put as much validation or make the UI look as pretty as I normally would for a fully finished product. However, it's important to note there that some users, depending on what product you're putting together, may value that validation. They may value the usability, the UX, and the front-end stuff that you don't think is valuable, because you think that getting the data is valuable,
especially if they have another alternative solution that that addresses their needs and is better, has a better user experience. Josie, go ahead and jump in here. It sounds like you.
This is the interesting thing, right? If you have a product that you are developing, and I'm going to speak from a little bit of experience here. And you create and you bring out that, in this particular case, this sort of RETS kind of a thing. You bring out what is going to be your riskiest thing, what is literally, in this particular case, the spine of what the product will be. It is pretty much one of your biggest selling points. If this doesn't work, there's no reason for you to bother wasting your time, kind of a deal.
Right.
If you, like you said, Chris, you're not having all of the validation in there and it's not the prettiest thing it could be or what have you, having witnessed this firsthand, users didn't know what it should have looked like. Users didn't know what they wanted. When users started becoming the early adopters, when they were getting in, when it was 100% free with a beta tag written and scraped all over it, so people understood that this was a concept that is now usable and functional, but there's going to be issues, just completely slathered all over it with no hint of when it will leave beta. What we found as a result was that the users actually influenced all of that stuff, what they thought should be the way to use it, what type of UX they should have, because they would expect when they're doing this one particular task, then they expect the mouse to move a particular way or a particular part of the actual tool to highlight a certain way. And that actually fed us the information we needed to create what we ended up creating. And it also built for us a huge group of people who did nothing but brag about us. So when we finally went from MVP, a little bit of testing. Oh, we've got a new feature. How does that work for you? Does it feel good? Is it a little good? Is it a little wrong? Did we get it right? Did we get it wrong? And then when we came out of beta and we went proper live, people were like, oh, let me get my credit card. And they were blown away because all of a sudden the UI changed and it grew and they adapted with it. There is this fantastic book, and this comes from someone who's a community manager. My main focus in anything that I do is community. There's a book on how to make your users badass. If you have not read this book, you need to read it, because in the end, your users will either make or break you. And that includes you yourself as a user, if you happen to use the product, and I happen to use the product that I am a part of.
What is the title of the book?
I believe it's simply How to Make Your Users Badass, or Badass Users. I just wrote this thing up. Oh my gosh.
We're gonna get that in the description. Though I have a counterpoint for the entire idea of the sort of early release and early betas and stuff like that.
Your users are awesome. There we go.
That depends on your target demographic and their technical proficiency. Because Josie said something very important. When the users go in, they don't read their mind. They don't know what the end product is supposed to look like. They're gonna judge you by what you have, and that's very, very apparent in game development, where a lot of gamers are totally not technical development type of deal. And there were games and game companies which flat out died because they released alpha and they said like this gonna change. They even provide like concept art and mock-ups of how it's all supposed to end up looking, but people still totally ignored it. They they got essentially the sort of fame of this is a shitty product, don't bother, and then no amount of marketing could break through that, because everyone was just convinced that it's a shit product, it's not gonna improve, and there's no bother, like just don't bother with it. So
I think
I'd say buyers beware with that idea.
Well, see, that's
it is definitely know your audience.
Like in Josie's case, I think that your MVP like had something or solved a problem that there was currently no solution for.
Yes.
So you didn't have your user base that was using your product didn't have a choice to go to something else.
No. There was something similar. There was something similar. So this was sort of coming in as sort of a slip shot. The idea originated because somebody was procrastinating, and this became their procrastination tool.
But then your MVP in that case was probably not an MVP. It was actually superior to the previous product in its category. And that's what I mean by...
I want to believe that. I really, really do.
So I think that's where like I think a lot of entrepreneurs misunderstand what an MVP is. MVP is actually the minimum superiorly viable product in a product category. So it has to be superior for doing something. So if you think about, like, for example, when Apple created their first iPhone, like their MVP was a phone that was superior to all other phones. They couldn't not put in certain features that everyone already had. They had to have all of those features plus the additional of like, the zoom, pinch to zoom, and like all this elastic scrolling and all this other stuff that was like truly like above and beyond what anybody expected. So it has to, like, if you're going to create a product, let's say for the CRM market today, you can't just put something that just like lists your contacts anymore, right? Like that MVP would have worked out great in 1984, but like today, it has to do way more than just a list of contacts. And that's what I mean, like, where you can't just put out just a small piece of the product and say, oh, but this CRM is going to be so much greater. It's just no one's going to ever use it.
I will also throw out that if you, like in our case, there was a product out there already that was doing something like what we were doing. Our difference was the fact that our MVP, or whatever you want to call it, what it was we were doing and using in our beta, was free.
Oh, that's another great. So another great disruptor, by the way.
Free is fantastic. It brought a huge user group. It really did.
Gmail was one of those, used one of those free things as a disruptor. That like when everybody else was giving 10 megabytes of storage space, and everyone was running into this 10 megabyte limit on free email, web-based email. Gmail came out and said, we'll give you a gigabyte. It was like, what? Like, what?
I remember when I was was in school at the time when all of this crazy stuff was happening. And I remember turning to a friend and going, have you got an invite yet?
Yeah. And then
I remember.
That sense of exclusivity actually added to it. But at the time, Google already had a name for themselves. They already had a brand to back what they were doing. Most of us, when we come up with an idea, even if we present a product out, our prototype, our RATs, our MVP, whatever, don't know what to do then. And this is, I think, one of the things that a lot of developers miss. I mean, Hamid, you said something brilliant, and every one of us can agree. We hate people. Don't make me talk to people. Please don't make me do that thing where I have to engage with somebody in a conversation. That whole side of awkwardness.
Right.
The community building side of things, that user engagement, the only reason why I think it's the particular product that I'm speaking of, and I'm being vague on purpose, that I'm involved in, the thing started out with just a very basic idea and a tiny bit of SEO that was just as successful as you can expect, which means money had to actually be put in to market it, to keyword it. And decisions had to be made is, should we actually do these, say, Google AdWords, or should we advertise in another location, or should we tap this other market? And I think that's something that also gets neglected. Just because you've built something doesn't mean they're going to come. It doesn't work that way. You have to make certain the word gets out. And even just trying to get the first 3 people. I don't know about any of you, but how many of you have built a product, built an app, or built something and turned to your friends and said, hey, what do you think? And every single one of them went, nah, I could see its purposes. Finding those really, really early adopters, I think, actually takes a little bit of investment. Out of curiosity, Hamid, what's the smallest amount you've invested for the largest return? And what was it in?
Usually an investment of time at a minimum, right? Like, so I remember when I was in college, I created a contact management tool for myself, and I put it out. At the time, there was no World Wide Web, but there was FTP sites, and people who created shareware products would put them out on these FTP sites. Like Indiana University had one of the most popular FTP sites, and I put it out on there, and there, every file that was put on there would have like a little README, and people would constantly look onto those FTP sites for what's new and download them and start using them. And the README just said, hey, let me know if you're using this thing. Send me an email. Or at the time, I don't think email was even super common. So I had my address. So I started receiving like letters at home.
Yes.
I didn't even ask for money, but some people said like it was so useful to me that they had like a $10 bill in the letter or whatever. They wanted like future updates or whatever.
So cute.
Yeah. So like it's. Oftentimes there's communities where you can like put what you've created onto. Today there's like sites like Product Hunt, right? Like that would be sort of like the equivalent of back then's FTP site, where you can launch products on, or put it on Reddit or Hacker News or whatever the case might be. And I think a lot of these, sort of venues are low cost to free, but it takes time to either build yourself up in the community so that your post doesn't go unnoticed, or you can spend some money on executing it.
How would you say you'd go about breaking into a community where you're intending to sell a product without them being sussed that out?
The community manager in me has just cringed in a way that has it's almost as bad as Darth Securitas.
Absolutely.
Okay? Yeah. So here is how I like to look at things. Everything that you do, make certain that you agree with ethically and morally. Number 1. Yeah. Number 2, if you're trying to break into a community so that you can advertise, you're missing the point of the community building exercise.
Uh-huh.
In the end, when you find a community, like, for example, there is a community that I have purposefully engaged myself with because I know a product that I have available actually benefits them. Do I mention my product? No. I spend more time engaging and building relationships. And if someone happens to go, well, what's this? I will casually mention something and let it go. If I am going to advertise my product in a community, I go directly to the community leads or to the website leads, and I go, do you accept advertising?
Oh, yeah.
I don't do that whole subversive manipulation and kind of thing, because what I do as a community manager is I want to know my community. I want to know, while I'm reading what someone said, I go, oh, you had that frustration? We have something that can fix that, or we don't have that yet. We need to make that a part of our thing, because that would actually solve that problem. It's almost like a research tool, because someone's going to use a tool differently than I will. And I want to make certain that what I'm bringing to them is actually benefiting them. I know wholeheartedly that I believe in whatever product it is I'm representing in that particular sphere, or else I wouldn't do it. I've turned away so many people who've come to me for community management because I don't believe in what they're doing.
Right.
And I still build the relationships. It's always got to be the relationships first. And then if you really want to do the advertising, bloody pay the damn site owners.
Right. I think that there's also different ways to do it, right? Like some communities, such as, for example, Quora, people might be specifically asking for recommendations on a particular topic, right? In the examples that you cite, Josie, I think you're right that especially if you're new to the community, you should never be advertising. But there might be sort of fundamental ways that you could do it in a subtle way that still provides value. So if you're responding to a question, you're responding with legit value answer, but your signature might contain, Hamid, founder of whatever, right? So there might be those ways in which you could do it in a subtle way, and it's not necessarily advertising or blatantly going out there and saying it, but. Yeah, I agree. You don't want to be the guy in the community. You don't want to be the guy at the party who's selling stuff, right?
Exactly.
Having a good time, and you're like, I don't need a house right now.
It's really interesting. It's really interesting because this is actually something that I've seen literally from both sides. Something that's really well done, and the sort of crash and burn horribly way to do. And I won't be mentioning the other side, but the one that does it really well, and this is where I actually learned how to do community outreach and how to sort of promote your work through being helpful and useful to community, is Elysian Shadows. It's a Dreamcast game development project where we not only we have our own little community, but we also do Twitch streams where we actually don't talk about our game all that much. We're mostly helping other people. People are coming in and they have questions about art and design to me. They have questions about pixel art. They have questions about shaders to Falco or our engine programmer, or about C++ templating. You have not. And we're spending often 6 hours every weekend, if not more, literally helping other people. But that pays out in huge amounts. But this is something that you have to do years in advance. This is not something that you can just do drop out of the hat. We're releasing in a month, let's start doing community outreach. Nah, you have to start it years in advance. You have to establish your brand, so to speak, and make those connections. So you're not shill. You're actually, in the end, you just have to be a genuine person who wants to help, and then people are gonna help you. If your only goal is to advertise your product, just pay for the advertisement, as Josie says.
The thing is, and this to me is one of the most critical things when it comes to sort of brand marketing. And it doesn't make a difference whether you're trying to sell a book, you're trying to sell a product, or sort of anything else along those lines. In the end, people are more interested in what you can give them than what they can give you. This is not to say that people are selfish, because all it literally means is that the world is of Sonder. Everyone's living their lives. They've got their goals. They've got their dreams. They've got their hopes. They've had their bad days and their good days. And if they have found you, your product, your book, your anything, if they have found your identity and they find that you are more than just pay me money, that you actually genuinely care about their success, whether it's a product you're helping to solve development issues on, or whether it's a story you're trying to tell because you want to entertain somebody, it makes no difference. If they see that there is more to you than $, pound signs, yen, or whatever currency you're working in, they're more likely to go, you're cool. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's why I'm absolutely in love with Keith, but Keith is
none of your answers there actually give anybody the answer they wanted. All of you just said that it's you can't. You have to do everything. If you're a one-man band and you have a product idea, you have to come up with the idea. You have to do the research. You have to break into a market as early as you possibly can in the development cycle. You have to do the development yourself. You have to do any marketing yourself. You have to all of the things that we would classically do to get a product out.
What it comes down to, yeah.
It is not easy.
There is the reason why not everyone's doing it.
You've got to do the support yourself.
Or there's more failure than there is success.
Yes.
Yeah. I will stress, don't let a failure in a project or something like stop you. I mean, if it's something you really want to do.
All of my personal projects have failed. Personal projects. Because I haven't got past certain hurdles. All of my business and commercial projects succeed because there's money behind them and there's already a support system there. But when we're developing a brand new idea,
that's the painful one.
Interesting. By the way, I had an epiphany that's super interesting. I would challenge Chris, your statement about all of your commercial projects succeed because they have money behind them.
Okay.
I tend to think that that's not true if you're creating new products or product categories. I think even a company like Google has like tons of failures for every successful one. But this is something that occurred to me the other day is that like we tend to have like a much higher view of our prediction ability because we have been able to predict so many failures. And it occurred to me that like when 95% of projects or products fail anyway, you could literally have no knowledge of a product or category or whatever and just say, or company, and say, oh yeah, it's going to fail, and still have a 95% accuracy rating. I mean, like, what category can you?
Excuse me, I'm going to make some bets.
Yeah, exactly. So we get this sort of like bias in our head that like, oh, I am so good at determining whether things are going to succeed or not. I knew that was going to fail. These guys were, out of their mind. But the reality is that it's really, really difficult to know what's going to succeed. And it's like generally you can have 95% accuracy rate by thinking everything is going to fail. Yeah. So you got to balance that out. Like if I had looked at Twitter and, like the idea behind Twitter, and somebody said, I'm going to create this thing where, you could write what you're doing and like announce it to the world, and other people would like follow you and subscribe to your announcements, and I'd be like, are you out of your mind? I mean, like,
do you think the age of technology? Do you think the technology age that we live in these days, with everybody being on a social network, everything being well, not everything, but a lot of things being public, do you not think that we're starting to understand social behaviour more because we've got all of this data available to us? We're starting to understand no. You don't?
No,
I think we are.
I don't. The only reason why I say I don't think is because I think what we're seeing is what was already there, and it's not necessarily helping us get to the next stage.
No, but to the point, you are learning more about that, like social behavior more, like in that, like
well,
everyone.
Fair enough with that, yeah.
Information, right? Like, all these social media platforms are proving that we're all seeking affirmation, even if we're sort of like the ones that don't talk, right? Like in social settings
lurkers.
Or whatever.
Yeah, we're all lurkers.
We all want more followers. We all want more likes on our, so it's interesting. I mean, like there's this sort of like interesting phenomena that existed that we didn't necessarily know about it.
Well, that's a group mentality thing. We've always known that we want to be part of the group. This is why you have those kinds of things.
Much smaller groups, though.
Yes, that even introverts wanted that, right? Like, but even introverts want that.
Yeah, but see, I think that's something. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's because of the books and stuff that I read growing up and stuff. But it's something that I've kind of already known.
Until
it's just now a way to do it in a slightly safe manner. But I also want to point out, we might keep going if we're not careful. Timing is of essence.
Yeah, I had a really nice closing thought, but you guys are so talkative, I just couldn't get in. So,
we just want to keep going.
So before we close in, I just wanted to go back to the previous topic about failures. When Chris said that all of his commercial projects were successful. For me, as you Hamid said, 90-something% of my commercial projects that I've been working for those 6 years as a game developer all failed. Like there was literally 1 or 2 successes, but still I felt like even though I was part of that failure, I failed forward. So here is, I would say, advice for everyone. If you want to make things, you will fail, but learn to fail forward. Don't have failures that will destroy you. Have it so that always by the end, you're sort of a little bit more ahead, be it in your outreach, popularity, or financial stability, or knowledge, or contacts, anything. Always make sure that whatever you're working on brings something to you or to your company, so the failure doesn't destroy the entire thing.
I like that thought.
Right.
Yes, and I want to give a very special thank you to Invina, who's been pasting. I give up on words. I give up on the English language today. But yeah, who's been pasting lots of things and stuff, and who has made a comment about Blizzard dropping in stocks after announcing some things, etc. Even though they've been on a high, you can't make predictions, as she's pointing out. I think what I need to say is, Hamid, we can have you back again someday, yes?
It was fun. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I mean, not like I'm not going to stalk you in other ways. I'm a user of his products.
Underrated.
Full disclosure.
I think stalking is a good thing.
Full disclosure. I am a user of the GitCrack, and I'm wearing my Keith t-shirt today. I love Keith. If you ever want to do something really cool for a product and you can't figure out what to do, build an awesome mascot and do crazy things with him. I was so excited when they released Keith's Closet. Keith migrates and shifts into all these fantastic things. I mean, we've seen him in Neo. I'm really hoping. I have a request, and I'm like, I've got all my fingers crossed that I get my request.
What is it? Tell me.
Oh, nepotism.
Nepotism.
Ada Lovelace. I want to see him dressed up as one of the very first developers and computer programmers, Ada Lovelace.
I used her in a talk the other day.
Keith is a kraken, okay? So, but my point is, hopefully we can have you back again, because this is something... There's a lot of topics we can dig into with you, and this is sort of a foundational topic for people who might be interested in actually doing something more than coming up with an idea. I think the end result is get ready to hurt. Blood, sweat, tears, my friends. Actually put the effort in. What you put in, you'll get back. Try and keep an open mind. Your users are awesome. If you need a community manager, look me up.
And if you don't get, if you do
if you need
fail,
a developer, look up Chris. If you need someone who does great art assets, go grab Patrick. If you need a tool to help you with the repos, go see Hamid.
We provide for all the needs.
Okay, are we going to do an RTFM this week then?
No, I'm actually going to let us get away with our okay,
telling
fine.
us off before the show, and you've gone break your own rules. I don't know.
It's only because of you guys.
It has come to the end of the show. Thank you very much, Hamid. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. I've usually do a lot of talking, but I've done more listening today because you're very. I've loved listening to you. I'm going to watch a few more of your talks as well, because I've occasionally in my life I come across somebody who is who inspires me in one way or another, and you've inspired me in what we're talking about today. In fact, in that I have lots of ideas. I've got loads of little things that I've worked on. I've even got software that I've written that nobody else has ever used that I use every single day. And it's a functional product. Maybe I can get a community together to, maybe I can put the product out there and start working with it. It solves a problem that somebody else doesn't, no other software solves. But it's a very specific problem to me and what I do. So I don't know.
Well, you don't know.
Yeah. So anyway,
bring it up.
It's inspired me. So thank you very much. Have you got anything you would like to pimp? Have you got a website, products, anything like that? We've already heard about GitCrack and Glow and Axosoft and chat.
Yeah, no,
pure chat.
I hate pitching stuff, but like if you enjoy like these talks, just Hamid Shojaee. I just actually posted a new blog post consolidating all the talks that I've given about software and product and SaaS metrics and all of this stuff. And my latest post on HamidShojaee.com, which no one's going to know how to spell anyway.
Well, they will, because they will actually read our show notes, and they will see that the show notes will have a link to your website in them, because they're good, smart listeners, aren't you?
But there you go. If you like these topics, go to HamidShojaee.com and look at the latest post. So it's a collection of all the talks I've given.
Yep. And of course, visit our website, my friends, dnistream.live, where you're going to find links to our Discord server where we talk dev, yell and RTFM about all of the things that drive us crazy in the dev world and security world. If you really want to get on my nerves, do that. You can also find links to our GitHub because we do publicly share how we develop things. And we'd love if you want to get involved, please do. We also have links to our podcasting stuff. And yes, you can find us on Spotify now. Everybody raise the roof.
Yay.
So our podcast is on the Spotify, apparently is how I wish to say that.
Pig Latin.
And yes. And if you go to our website, you can actually contact us to join us as a guest if you want. Come debate with us. You know we like to see Chris get really angry. Really, we've had some fun episodes with that. But you could also suggest a topic or share a story. We love you.
Cool.
Also,
Thanks,
Hold on, we're not done.
Not quite done yet. Not quite. Nearly.
I'm done with this. Screw you guys. I'm going home.
Yeah. So, especially if you want to debate whether light mode or dark mode is better on your IDE, welcome, because there will be some heated discussion about that. But most importantly, follow us on Twitter at DNIStream, where we post the best of things, the most amazing of things, development humor, all kinds of stuff. But generally, we have the best Twitter, I'd say, in the entire Twitterverse. So if you're not following us, then you're doing yourself a huge disservice. That's what I'm going to say.
Wow. I'm wondering if we're overselling ourselves or underselling, and I'm thinking it's underselling. Anyway, we hope to see you guys next week at 7 p.m. I am trying to nail down a particular guest who is being slightly elusive, but it's not his fault. Some things have happened, and we're trying to make certain everything weaves together. Be aware, next week is our last show for this year. And then we take a break, and then we come back from the holidays. But anyway.
I expect everybody in Twitch chat to be wearing a Christmas jumper.
I have a fantastic Christmas jumper, but I will save that for next week.
I don't have any. Oh my god, I don't have any. I'm so
at least show up with clothing on, Patrick. That's all I request.
But I'm so sexy without it.
Moving on. So yes, thank you very much.
Forward. Thank you, everybody. Yes,
to everybody.
Farewell from Chris.
See you later,
Patrick.
Bye.
Our fantastic guest, Hamid.
Bye,
and
guys.
Josie. Bye, everyone. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.